welcome back to Here Be Dragons. I am your host, Stephen Stark. Joining me this week, we got John back as per usual. Nessie's not here. It's her off week. She's working, but she'll be back next week, which we're looking forward to. But yeah, we kind of had to. We did last week. We did not announce this stream. We didn't know what we were doing, but we talked and we figured it out. We've got some stuff scheduled. I actually have more things scheduled, John, which is good. But
Okay.
yeah, so we're doing a retro review. And John brought up a few movies, and as soon as he said The Matrix, I said, "Yeah, that one."
Yeah, and I have to say, like, I wasn't like I wasn't unexcited at the idea, but I'm more excited now because I rewatched the movie today. And it always, for some reason, I don't know if it's the fact that, the sequels I like them better than most, but they didn't hit the same. And I think sorry guys. Oh, okay. And I think that's kind of had an effect over the years of sort of at times diluting what a massive achievement the
This
first film
film,
is.
yeah,
And every time I go back to watch it, I'm like, holy shit, this really was an absolute classic.
it
So
really
yeah.
was. Like, I rewatched it yesterday, and it's okay. Some of the CGI doesn't quite hold up to modern standards, but like, if that is that's like the only bad thing I can say about this movie. And there's so much good on so many levels we're going to get to. But I wanted to say hi to someone in the chat I don't recognize. Hello, Renly's Peach. Welcome to the madness. Love the name, by the way. I'll go to my grave thinking about you. But yeah, so the Matrix, the first Matrix. I'm sure we'll touch on it in context of the later movies somewhat, but just this film is such a masterpiece on so many levels that I don't know. It's hard to know where to start.
Yeah, I would say that for me, the major thing to start off is not even the movie itself, but the sort of like I guess it's part of it is the marketing and the sort of context in which the world saw the Matrix film, because I distinctly remember, the advertisements on TV that were completely centered around, showing a bunch of really cool stuff and then going, hearing Lawrence Fishburne say, unfortunately, nobody can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard to describe to modern audiences because we get everything these days. Like, we know 99.9% of the time we know what we're in for when we go see a movie because the advertisements just show you so much. And with this film, it was like I remember seeing it for the first time and not having a clue what was going on for the first 30 minutes of the movie, but it was so entertaining nonetheless that you were just like, let me just give the movie a chance to and like
Mm-hmm.
explain what's
Yeah,
going on. And
you might not have understood what was happening, but you knew it was cool.
yeah. And so around like the 30-minute mark when when Lawrence Fishburne breaks down what the Matrix actually is and fully explains it to
Mm-hmm.
Neo, then everything clicks into place and you're like, okay, I get what this movie is doing. But even like you said before that, everything is so freaking cool. I remember talking to my friend Tim growing up, when the movie first came out on DVD and we were watching scenes like Trinity leaping over
Mm-hmm.
the building, with her arms going and her legs and stuff. And I remember saying to him, just imagine if we had like a time machine and you could show this to people like 40, 50 years in the past and they probably have like a panic attack just looking at it because it was so extraordinary looking and like out of this world. And
right,
like there's no way to describe for people who weren't there at the time, like how freaking cool this movie was.
right. Well, and like, okay, there's so much cool about this movie on that level. But the reason when you said we could do the Matrix, I was like, that one is because of the ideas, the themes, and the philosophy that it explores. Like, it's a movie about existentialism, and like that's can be such a dry, uninteresting topic. But they made people care about it, and not just care, but like, here we are 22, 23 years later. This movie is still relevant. It's still a touchstone in the sci-fi movie genre, but also in how we think about life itself, which not many movies can do.
Yeah, I'll fully admit, like when I saw this, let's see, it came out in '99, so I was about 15 years old. Like what I got from the film, aside from, oh my God, it's so cool and it's, it's exciting and it looks awesome and all that stuff, was I got like, the fact that it was kind of, I don't know if I thought of it in these terms, but I understood that it was like a, sort of a Messiah story, a chosen one arc. And so I was receptive to that, but I don't think it was until a little later that I started to understand what it was saying about our lives. And as we move through the world and the way we perceive things and whether we're going to sort of settle for,
right,
for everyday life. And so I didn't get that until later. But that's what's so great is I think as you enter different stages of your life, you can pull back the layers of this movie and understand it in a lot of different ways. And then when I'm trying to remember when I thought it was a great deal later, but I guess it wasn't. It was probably just a couple years later when the DVD box set came out of the 3 films and the Animatrix. And there were philosopher audio commentaries on the films. And that was a real trip to listen to and to actually hear, these experts who think about this stuff, peel back the layers of the story and, of all 3 films. And honestly, it made me I think that's what made me appreciate the other 2 films in a way that, maybe I wouldn't have otherwise. I still have my issues with them, but there is a lot going on with the trilogy overall. And I say trilogy because I haven't actually seen the whole of the new film. I've seen about like 10 minutes and then I had to, like, not because I didn't like it, but because I just had to turn it off at that point. So I'll get to it at another point. But so my knowledge for this discussion will just be based off of the original 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot to, like, there's so many different layers.
Yeah, and I'm kind of like, I want to maybe talk about the movie first and save the philosophy part for later.
Yeah. Well, because I'm by no means going to be able to talk intelligently about some of that stuff. So.
Well, I will be able to talk intelligently about some of it, but not nearly all of it. Like, I didn't study philosophy, but I have read philosophy,
Yeah.
So there were things in this movie that we had never seen before and blew my freaking mind. How did they do that? And I've since, watched behind the scenes stuff about how they did that. But that shot where Trinity jumps up in the air and time freezes and the camera rotates around her.
Bullet time. That was such like a big thing when the movie came out. It's like, how they do the bullet time with the cameras.
Yeah.
And, and
it's really just a whole bunch of really small cameras in an arced rig that take a picture simultaneously, and then they just rotate through those frames so it looks like the camera pans around her. But it still was something we'd never seen before, and it's honestly something that they had to develop the camera technology that could take that sharp an image and then be small enough to be packed that close together on a rig.
Yeah, I will say that and this goes sort of in, and you said that, you felt some of the CGI had, was showing
Aged a
some
little
of
bit.
its age. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was pretty impressed by how well everything holds up. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because this is kind of my favorite era of visual effects, because the CGI was starting to get really good to the point where they could use it to do cool stuff, but they weren't yet able to overuse it. It's like they had to rely on a lot of old school, special effects.
Right.
In addition,
there's a lot
to
of
the
in-camera stuff going on too. You're right.
Yeah, and so it still feels grounded, in the way that more 90s action movies are. But they're able to do some really cool shit with the CGI, and yeah, it's it's why this era of the Matrix and Lord of the Rings, that time period is the sort of the perfect juncture of using both styles of visual effects that I just love.
Here's the thing, though. I can forgive almost. I can almost. Well, you know what? I can forgive even the stuff that's not holding up as well, because all of those things are taking place within the Matrix, which has its limitations, as described by Morpheus perfectly several times. It's built on rules and things like gravity, and all of that is in place. So the CGI elements would come in when they're breaking those rules. So I can even forgive it, oh, it hasn't aged perfectly because the Matrix itself is struggling to render whatever it is these minds are causing to happen in that place.
I will say, I think we can agree that everything holds up a lot better than the Agent Smith brawl in the second film.
Yeah. But they try to animate a whole person, and that's something we still can't really do.
Yeah. Well, we can do it better now than they.
We can do it better now.
That's. I will say one thing, and this is not a discussion on the second film, by the way, but even though that doesn't work for me, but I've always said that I admire whenever filmmakers take big swings with visual effects, because we wouldn't be where we are now without those swings. So things like that, and things that, to name another movie, I don't think the young what's his name, Jeff Bridges in Tron Legacy works completely, but that was a big swing,
right?
And
you gotta try.
Yeah, exactly. And so without those big attempts at trying something very ambitious, then you don't make any progress in that realm. And that may not have worked great, but then you've got the sequence in Blade Runner 2049 where for spoilers I won't mention who, but a certain character shows up, and it's for a very quick shot, but it's so believable and perfect, and so you can't get there without taking these other steps. Anyway, that's a digression, because this all sprung from
digression. How dare you? We don't do that here.
Yeah,
we stay on topic.
And honestly, so much of to bring it back to this first film, this really was groundbreaking in so many ways. So this is definitely a film where they did stuff and it paved the way for for so much of what we've seen in visual effects in years to come. And and which, by the way, this film actually did win the Oscar for Best Visual Effects over, at the time, I was like, oh my God, how can you do that? It won over Star Wars Episode 1, which as a as a 15-year-old, when I was, your conversations about Episode 1 put to the side, I remember being 15 years old watching the movie and the scale of what they were able to do with CG effects in that film. I was like, oh my God. And then The Matrix ends up winning, but I think it's because it was more grounded and doing stuff that would be completely believable and maybe they're showing their age now, but definitely to a 1999 audience.
That much.
Yeah, but it just goes to show you how amazing the effects in this movie were, and they still are spellbinding to this day.
It doesn't break the immersion, not really.
Yeah.
There are some things that my eye goes, oh, I noticed, but the story is so good. Okay, so there's really three main. Well, I would even dare to say there's four main characters in the film. Obviously, Neo, Morpheus, and Trinity, but also Cypher.
And which I've always thought that's one of the things that the sequels miss, is the presence of God, I can never pronounce his name, but we'll just call him Joe.
Yeah, Joey Pants. It's Joey Joe Pantaleone, but you can just call him Joey Pants.
Okay. He's so good in this. I got a real chuckle out of when he's having the dinner with Agent Smith, and he's like, I want to be someone important, like an actor.
Yeah, good stuff.
Which and I really appreciate the sort of breaking the fourth wall moments with this in entire film, but it's done in a way that really works. It's not it doesn't take you out of it. That's a little moment, but also just the whole thing about what I was saying before about no one can be told what the Matrix is. There was this whole meta thing, where it was talking about this thing everybody has to get to the movie theater to watch this thing to figure out what it is, and so yeah, I love all that stuff.
Yeah, the thing is, from a narrative standpoint, you don't really need Cypher per se. You can have another thing happen in the context of the story that puts Neo in the same sort of position to be that antagonist at the end. Something miraculous has to happen because I'm about to kill this guy. It could be anything else, but the importance of it being Cypher is someone who knows the truth and has rejected it. He wants to go back in. This is rubbing against the philosophy talk, but he is like the mirror image or the inverse parallel or whatever you want to call it of Neo.
Yeah, and what's great is we can so easily sympathize with Cypher. We not so much with things that he does, later on in the film, but we understand his position, that he's pissed off that and there's some validity to it, because
there is,
because Morpheus really could have given a little more information about what they were in store for, because he is very vague.
The names, every name in this movie serves a purpose, even.
Yeah.
Neo not only is he something new, but Neo is also an anagram for one, and Neo becomes the one. I don't know that he is the one the same way, but he becomes the one. And we'll get into the philosophy talk. But Cypher, Cypher, is basically the same as Cypher, Cipher, which is another word for zero. So you've got a one and a zero, which is binary code, and it is like the on switch, the off switch. I choose the truth, I choose the lie. Those names are really doing some heavy lifting there.
Yeah, and like I'm all for the films like sort of bring to the forefront these issues of like, you know, in life, are we gonna sort of settle for just the accepted you know, like what we're fed, and the, you know, sort of, are we going to step outside of that? But if you look at the actual real scenario of the film, where it's either like being, you know, in a computer dream world controlled by these machines, where, okay, granted, there's some really horrific stuff going on with that. But then on the other end, you're plunged into this like dark, harsh world where you're not, yeah, it's a hellscape, and you're not going to have a whole lot of fun. It's like, you know, I got to say, I'm kind of with Cypher on this. It's like, I'd rather just be ignorant and have like a, you know, have a shot at a, you know, what I would perceive as a good life.
Right.
I didn't even see the.
Yeah. Here, I'm going to put it back up. Aren't Joey pants just Mama Kangaroo's pouches? They are. Baby kangaroos are Joey, for those of you that are don't necessarily understand the joke.
Well, see, even if I had seen it, I needed it explained to me. So It's not that I was ignoring it, I just didn't understand it.
Oh, you're not cultured enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we learned you something just now.
But yeah, and speaking of, like, you brought up Neo's name, like, I think you could definitely say that there's actually yet another, even though, yes, he's an antagonist, but you could argue that, like, yeah, Agent Smith, I think he's very much as much of a central character, you know, especially when you take the trilogy as a whole. And he really is the one who, you know, especially when you get to the sequels, he totally gets that he's in a movie where he shouldn't take himself too seriously. Whereas maybe as the trilogy goes on, some of the other people in the franchise kind of lose a little sight of that. But he's the one who's always having a blast, you know, doing his part. And
yeah,
and I just love the scene where he just, you know, sort of has that frank conversation with Morpheus, you know, and he's holding by that, and he's like, I can't stand it here, I have to get out. It's great. And it's hard to remember that this was before Lord of the Rings, so before he was Elrond.
Yeah, like when I watched Lord of the Rings, I was like, Agent Smith.
I remember there were people who came out of Fellowship of the Ring who were convinced and would argue with you if you said this wasn't the case, that when Elrond first pops up on screen, he says, "Welcome to Rivendell, Mr. Baggins." Where he says Frodo Baggins, but everybody swore he said Mr. Baggins.
Mr. Baggins.
Yeah, exactly. Which, by the way, oh my God, every single time he says Mr. Anderson, it's so delicious.
Like, yeah, there's so much to love in this film. And like the performances are right up there with anything else we can talk about. Like, this is the movie that made Keanu Reeves' career. You will never convince me otherwise. He was in danger of being that guy from Bill and Ted.
Yeah. And what's funny is I remember at the time, like, hearing some sort of backhanded, you know, compliments of, you know, people saying that his performance boiled down to him going, whoa, you know, because there were people who couldn't sort of separate him from Bill and Ted. But I think with the benefit of hindsight, you look back at this movie and he's incredible as
Yes.
Neo. He's so good. And I'm glad he's gotten the respect over the years, and he's had a lot of success with other movies, and especially with like the John Wick series and all that. And he's got, you know, like so many memes that are just about so everybody loves him. But he's great as Neo, and I'm glad that I'm glad that people appreciate that.
Slasher Fred says, if you guys have ever seen that 90s movie called Johnny Mnemonic, that movie is like a pre-Matrix. It stars Keanu Reeves and also involves a main protagonist who goes into a virtual reality. I remember it, but it's been a minute.
I don't think I actually ever saw it, but I definitely knew of it.
Yeah, I've seen it, but I don't think I've seen it since like it was new.
But I was even guilty. Like there was that period where it was like, you know, Keanu Reeves is, you know, is Ted, you know, and I don't think it was. Go ahead. Sorry.
The difference between those films and the Matrix is the way that the Matrix entered the cultural zeitgeist afterwards, the way it touched culture as a whole, not just pop culture, but like it has become a touchstone for everybody who watches movies.
Yeah. Like we like to, you know, talk about, you know, our favorite stuff, whether it's entered the zeitgeist and whether it's had like cultural impact. But like you can't even question the impact that the Matrix has had. The fact that even to this day, even like, and it has nothing whatsoever to do with the fact that they just came out with a new movie. Like, you know, there wasn't another Matrix film since 2003. And in all the years since then, you know, you would just hear references to the Matrix virtually every day of your life.
Yeah.
You know, it's absolutely incredible the impact that it had.
How many movies have spoofed the bullet time dodge, or like how many later action films tried to emulate the sort of like multi-camera rig for those panning shots? So it's like visually it did that, but also like psychologically it touched us. It made us question reality in a way we never really had before, myself included.
I mean, I actually question, like, I would pose the question to people: is there a time that you're online where you aren't thinking about the concept of being plugged in? You know, I'd wager that for the vast majority of people, they'd say yes. That's sort of a concept that like at least flashes through my mind, you know, anytime I use the internet. And it seems to me that's, you know, it may not have, that as a concept may not have completely started with the Matrix, but the Matrix definitely, you know, brought it to the forefront. And
well,
and yeah,
there was a thought experiment proposed in 1974 that is kind of like the central idea behind the Matrix, and that was a philosopher, I can't remember his name, but he asked a group of people, you know, if you found out that you were in a simulated reality, would you want to be disconnected? And most people said yes. Most people chose the red pill, but I'm not convinced that his methods were sound, because I think there's actually a whole lot more of us that would choose the blue pill than we give ourselves credit for. And some of that, like, because there's no context. What's my life like in the Matrix? What's life going to be like outside the Matrix? And that's central to Morpheus's question that he poses to Neo in the pill scene. He says, All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. I'm not saying you're going to like it. I'm not saying it's pretty or good or anything, but it is the truth. And
Yeah, that's like I'm. Yeah, I'm always conflicted about how I feel about Morpheus, and particularly because of that moment, because it's like, yes, he's saying that all he's offering is truth, but he's not really giving the full lowdown on what awaits Neo, outside of the Matrix. Um, and so, yeah, and I think part of that is because, and I do see that comment.
yeah.
I think, part of that is that he's spent his life searching for the one. So, it's particularly in Neo's case, he's gonna be sort of honest by saying all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. But he's not going to, you know, go too far to the point of like actively dissuading Neo.
Right, because, well, Morpheus has an agenda too.
Yeah.
He does. His job is to find the one. Here's the thing: Morpheus has found a lot of people. I forget whose line it is, but he pulled everyone on the Nebuchadnezzar out of their out of the Matrix. So he's pulled out a lot of people. So there's this idea that he could be just pulling people until he accidentally grabs the one. There's this idea that if he grabs 1,000 people out and one of them turns out to be the one, see, of course he was going to pull out the one the whole time, luck or no luck. It's the whole. I think of that thing from Avatar: The Last Airbender. The Oracle said I would meet my true love while wearing these red shoes, so I wear these red shoes every day now.
Yeah.
But Neo is not the one. There's a couple of arguments to be made that Morpheus is the one, that Agent Smith is the one, or that Neo is the one, but not because he was chosen, but because he chooses to be. And that's actually the interpretation that I like the most.
Well, especially like, and if we were just separating the first film, I would go ahead and, yeah, I'm not going to be Aaron. Sorry, you are going to have to come to terms with that.
Yeah.
Like if we were able to separate out the first film, I know that like my interpretation when I saw the film and for the couple of years after that was simply that Neo was the one. He just couldn't be told that he was. He needed to discover that for himself. But then as you get into the sequels and you realize that, well, this entire notion of the one is another level of control, and so it really becomes what he decides for himself what he's going to do, and what his own path is. So it gets more complicated than simply is he or isn't he the one.
Right, but I even think, like, within the context of this first film, my read is, and again, I am just talking about this film, and I'm letting it stand alone, and I'm letting everything else be other stuff. Canon doesn't matter, right? But my interpretation is that anyone could be the one, but they had to choose that for themselves, which runs parallel to the sort of like self-actualization of existentialism, which this movie is about. Existentialist believes that basically there is no real reality. Existence is meaningless. Therefore, it has the meaning that we ascribe to it. And in the context of this film, Neo ascribes his own morality and ethics to a world that he knows is inherently without those things. The Matrix itself is without ethics and morals, really. It's a meaningless existence. But he chooses to self-actualize in that context, to live beyond the limitations of the rules set in place. And Nietzsche would call him Ubermensch. Please forgive the sort of like co-opting of that term. It is a useful term in philosophy, and we'll just set aside its occasional historical, really terrible uses. But the Ubermensch, as Nietzsche would describe it, is a sort of idealized man who realizes that meaningless is existence and so chooses to support the flourishing of life as the meaning that he ascribes to existence. And the sort of inverse of that is Cypher. Cypher also believes in nothing, but he's ready to be like, well, if nothing's nothing, I might as well go party it up and live the rich man's life and sit in a hot tub and be someone important like an actor. So that is something that a person has to do, and it's a journey through deconstructing your preconceived notions and building a new lens on reality, and having those views tested, and having your doubt and overcoming your doubt and becoming firm in your belief, and then spreading love and goodness in the world. That is the ultimate goal of existentialism. And the literal opposite is that of the nihilist Cypher, the 0 to Neo's 1, the off switch to Neo's on switch. Speaking of switch, I love that character, and I didn't want to get to the end of this without mentioning a probably non-binary character in the original writing.
Which I feel like I've read interviews where they said that the Wachowskis would have wanted to push that further, but 1999, major studio film. I don't think they're going. I don't think they felt like you did away with it, and they were. Yeah, I'm sure they were right at the time. And so I think I read something where Switch was going to be, and I could be wrong about this, so please.
I read the same. I read the same thing somewhere.
I think where Switch was going to be female in the real world, and then in the Matrix, he would be male, and
I think you have it the opposite.
Maybe it's the opposite. Yeah. Sorry. I probably read the interview once. So one of those ways. And so I think like that would have been extraordinary. I think they did kind of the best they could at the time, by making Switch androgynous, and, it is what it is, but you can see that that's what they were going for with that character.
Yeah.
And if anything, I was watching the film today, and I was like, if anything, I wanted more of Switch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, her not like this moment. I mean, it cuts me every single time.
Yeah.
It's her delivery of that, not like this. Oh, it chills me. But we shouldn't be surprised that the Wachowskis wanted to introduce that type of character. It's unfortunate that it didn't get past studio.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't be surprised, because in the credits it says this was directed by the Wachowski brothers. So
yeah, which
those people don't exist anymore.
Yeah. I've always been sort of, I've wondered about whether they have an impulse to change those credits, or if maybe it's a legal thing where the credits are what they are and they have to stay that way. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's if you see, obviously, where they've gone, and the people that they've become, the way their lives have changed, you can see it's very obvious that they would have wanted to do that. And really, like, it's evidence, like, in all their other work and stuff like that. It seems very obvious that that's what they would have wanted the character to be. And so, yeah.
No, I can only speak for myself, but like my attention to gender identity, it has become very heightened over these last few years. Not just other people's, but my own. And it's just so obvious what they wanted Switch to be. I love the portrayal that actress gives us, but I also like that she's presented as sort of non-binary. We guess that Switch is a woman based on societal norms that have been beaten into our brain,
and that certainly at 15 years old, that was my assumption, because that's the way I'd sort of been trained to think. But I'm like, but yeah, it's just sort of the way
softer facial features, higher pitched voice. That's a woman.
Yeah, but so my perception of things has changed so much in recent years, even, and so that when I watch it today, I'm like, I get that that's what the intention was, and so I view it very differently than I did back when I was a teenager. So.
Me too, which is why I really wanted to pause and sort of like maybe not belabor this point, but at least make sure we brought it up and gave it some due. It's important, and if it was made today, it would not be weird for the characters to present differently in the Matrix than they do in the real world, because the Matrix is about your mental perception of yourself.
Which I actually wonder, because if they tackle that at all in the new film, I would think that I would not be surprised for that to be the case. So that's something I'll have to keep an eye out for when I do watch the new film. But
yeah, I need to watch it too. I really want to, but
yeah, I just missed
free somewhere.
Yeah, I just missed it when it was on its initial run on HBO Max, and I know it'll come back there at some point. So so I'm just end up waiting for that. But yeah.
Well, the rest of the Matrix films are on HBO Max, so makes sense. Do you choose what you look like in the Matrix, consciously or subconsciously? I think you do choose, but I also think it is subconscious. Is it about self-perception?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of ambiguous, because they certainly are able to decide their clothing.
Well, that's true. So maybe it's a bit of column A, a bit of column B.
Yeah.
Like, nobody outside of the Matrix wears any makeup, and their lighting is really harsh on them to sort of highlight any flaws, wrinkles, blemishes on their skin, what have you. Whereas inside the Matrix, they're all very slick, hair's did, got their eyebrows are on fleek, and they look dressed to the nines.
Yeah, I'd be anxious for the return of my hair in the Matrix.
Mm-hmm. John, you'd have this like, yeah, and I would have war braids, which I can't do. My hair is too fine.
That's that would be an interesting conversation to have. Like, how far would you go with your as they call it, residual self-image, if it was completely up to you?
Beard, my man, dude. I would have the epicest beard, and if epicest wasn't a word, it is now. Yeah, I'm bringing it back, Jess. I'm bringing it back, if only for one night.
But yeah, now I could give the I don't know if any of you have ever seen uh, the pictures, and this may have actually resulted in some of my later hair loss. But when I was younger, I did go through a moment where I had my hair bleached blonde.
Oh wow, I don't think I've
Um,
seen that.
and it came out really bright. So I remember I did it right before back when I was in karate. It was before like a weekend karate camp, and I went there, and they had like a guest, um, you know, sensei from another school, and he was like doing some kind of exercise, and he was looking for like volunteers, and he looked around and he pointed at me. He said, "You, Billy Idol, come here."
Oh wow, Billy Idol.
Yeah.
Billy Idol
So
blonde.
yeah, exactly. So I remember I went there with a hat on, and some people thought I had just shaved my head because it was so
Because it was
bright.
so white, it looked like your skin tone.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this is all on
Just
topic
as
because we're talking about martial arts, which is key to this film. So
it is, because you can just download kung fu into your brain. What is
oh
muscle
my
memory when
God,
you have no
like
muscle?
I know kung fu, that is such like a classic line.
That
And
yeah,
I remember so many times sticking my DVD in and just like skipping to that scene. And it starts off with the camera panning around to him right before he says that line. And it was always so cool just watching, him and Morpheus, um, eh, do the fight and
but
like,
like it's a beautifully choreographed and shot action sequence with some larger than life, you know, Morpheus jumping 10 feet in the air in slow mo and all of that stuff. But it serves such an important purpose in the context of the film, too. It is a fight that means something because we're seeing, first of all, okay, you can download basically anything into someone's brain. But the end of that fight, where do you think me being stronger and faster has anything to do with my muscles here? Do you think that's air you're breathing? It's another there is no spoon kind of moment. And it's just like,
and that says like so much about, okay, granted, it's not in like the, it's not a literal analogy for our world. We are actually breathing air as far as we know. But like this idea of you know um what you're thinking kind of can determine the way you know you interact with the world. And if you decide I'm going to look at a certain thing this way, you know you can put certain things into action. Like I'm gonna wake up this morning and I'm gonna hop out of bed and be happy and energetic and do this rather than being down about whatever happened yesterday. It's your focus determining your reality.
right. Which is another central theme of this film is about, I mean, there's some about determinism versus free will. There's some about perceptional reality. Like the world exists because it's what my brain tells me is there. And how much can I trust that? Because it's really all just electrical impulses in a hunk of meat.
Yeah.
I'm touching the desk, but that is like a secondary level experience. It's outside my body. I can only trust what my senses are telling me, and the matrix is real enough that you can't trust what your senses are telling you there, and that is a terrifying prospect, but it's also an incredibly liberating prospect depending on how you choose to look at it, which circles back to that existentialism versus nihilism debate that this movie is having. Um,
Yeah.
which is why it's so good. It's like it's such a great lesson in philosophy disguised as a sci-fi action film.
Yeah, it's really great when entertainment can do that. It can actually open your mind up to things without, a significant portion of the audience probably even realizing that it's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is why it blew so many people's minds back in 1999.
Yeah.
So somehow the chat has descended into 90s hairstyles for men and like what's the most 90s thing ever. I love you guys, by the way. Thank God for our chat. You know what I mean? Like, they keep it real. We're over here talking about philosophy and they're like Fruitopia. I wouldn't have it any other way.
But yeah, no, I want to step back for a moment because we were talking about Morpheus earlier, and I wanted to just talk about the fact of like what an amazing kind of moment it was when you're having this big build up to Morpheus, um and like I want to go ahead and have a frank discussion about this because it's kind of all about how we sort of learn and grow and become a bit more, less entrenched in sort of what's been ingrained into our heads. I hope this doesn't make like teenager me come off awful, but when I first saw this film, and I must have missed the imagery of like Morpheus on Neo's computer and stuff like that. And I didn't know who the cast was in this film. But when I heard Morpheus's voice on the phone as he's talking to Neo, I'm going to be honest and say that I thought Morpheus was a white dude. Um, because I didn't recognize Lawrence Fishburne's voice. And I think I'd been trained to, like this sort of larger than life figure, sort of
Right.
leading our main character was going to be this like, quote unquote wise like white guy.
Right.
And so the moments when, they go into the building and open the doors and Lawrence Fishburne turns around and is revealed as Morpheus, it was such an impactful moment. And I think subconsciously probably sort of altered the ways, what I expect from my entertainment and as far as casting and what my perception of certain roles could be. And it was just so amazing to see him, play this role and like he's so iconic. There's so much of these movies that is iconic that's easy to take for granted, but Lawrence Fishburne as Morpheus is like, I feel like he is such a major event in sort of the history of film and such a dynamic character so I think even if I didn't realize it at the time, I think it really opened my eyes to you know um to people of color in film and and what to throw my sort of ingrained notions of who should be cast as what like sort of out the window.
Well, good.
And I'm afraid like
Good.
I'm not completely communicating what I mean very well, but like it was so great to see that, and I'm glad that they cast him in this role because he was amazing.
He really was. And again, I've seen video essays about Morpheus being the one. I don't. Morpheus is not the one to me. That's Neo. But Morpheus could have been the one. But whatever it was that the Oracle told him, he didn't believe he could be the one. So he never took the step to self actualize into the one.
Mm-hmm.
But Morpheus is the god of dreams. And we see a lot of dreamlike imagery in the first act of the film as Neo is struggling with what is the Matrix, as he's still living as Mr. Anderson. All these Matrix interactions manifest like dreams. He always wakes up in his bed, and isn't sure what those dreams mean. But you also have Morpheus's ship, the Nebuchadnezzar, which I purposely mispronounce as the Nebuchadnezzar all the time because it makes me laugh. And it's got Chad in the middle. But King Nebuchadnezzar was in the Bible, in the book of Daniel. Daniel comes to him because he is looking for someone to interpret his dreams for him. So Morpheus is the god of dreams, riding in a ship named after someone who wants help interpreting his dreams. And so both of those names sort of strongly represent what Morpheus is to Neo. So,
yeah.
Oh, yeah, I got you. It took me a second to figure out what you were saying there, Dan, but once I got there, well, yeah. It's the guy that threw him into a lion's den because he didn't like what he had to say. But, so yeah, Morpheus is not the one, but I think he is not the one because he cannot question the reality. He can't break away from his belief that he's not. He could have been, but if he could believe that he was, he would be, because that's what the one is. It's self-actualization. It is peering beyond the bounds of what society tells you all the rules are, and you becoming the best version of yourself by giving up your attachment to those constraints.
Yeah, and he is very, laser focused on this concept of the one and believing in the one, and it's very dogmatic of him, and I think he even gets called out for this in the sequels. And I think what's important is that by the end of that story, of the trilogy, it comes around to, it's like not so much believing in the one, but believing in Neo.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, and so I think that sort of dogmatic belief has held him back from looking at himself and seeing that he might have been capable of that, mm-hmm. But he's so laser focused on this is his mission in life to find the one.
He can't ask the question, what if I'm the one?
Yeah.
His mind will not let him do that. And this movie is very much about what the limitations of your own mind do to you. 99% of people are perfectly fine within the matrix. They don't want to disconnect. I believe that 99% number is actually said by Agent Smith when he's talking to Morpheus.
But that's the thing, like, and the concept of the one is another layer of control. It sort of keeps, everybody even like outside of the matrix in, set in their roles. Mm-hmm. And that includes Morpheus. Of his role is to find the one, not to potentially be the one.
Right. But if he could realize that reality is meaningless and he can create his own reality, he could create a reality in which he is the one. That's what I'm saying. Anyway, we've been going for about an hour. You want to do a mid-roll?
Sure. I mean, like, I think I said this last week, but like, I can't believe it's been an hour already. It's because, like,
it's a great topic. It's a fun topic.
I think we know, this topic so well just because of what movie
I've seen
it
the movie
is.
1140 dozen times. So
yeah, I was even questioning whether it was necessary for me to watch it again.
I'm glad I did.
Because I'm like, I know this movie, but yeah, I wanted to watch it. So.
Right. It didn't hurt me either. Well, let's do a mid-roll real quick, all right?
Okay.
We'll start with making sure our patrons get our shout-outs because we love those people. They are keeping the lights on. They pay for StreamYard. They pay for our ongoing Zoom call. We love you guys. And they are headed by our alpha patron, Ridiculous Ed Tollett. And the rest of the High Council, Lord John Bronsteen the Wise, and Sixto Sounds, a.k.a. JP the Axe Grinder. Thank you, High Council. We love you guys. You the best. Sean is probably getting off work right about now, so yeah, drive safe, buddy, on the way home. But the High Council is also supported by the lords and ladies of the realm, including Ryan Stavka, the Russian Quartermaster, Reflective Rambling, Arch-Maester Emma, and Kate, Mistress of the House of Books. Thank you, lords and ladies, for keeping the lights on over here. John, you got something coming up, don't you?
Yeah, it's gonna be just a little bit later than I originally planned, but we'll get to why that is in a second when we're talking about what's coming up on this channel. It won't be this weekend, but next weekend, Saturday the 12th at 7 p.m. over on John Webster Film, I'll be doing a discussion of the fantasy film Stardust with my good friends Aaron and AK. And we're going to be having a blast. Stephen, you have to watch the movie, so we're probably going to try and fit in a watch party for the movie because it is on Netflix. So those of you in the Slack group, stay tuned for news about that.
I've never seen it. I'm looking forward to it.
It's so good because even though it's not exactly the same type of sort of style and humor, it's the one film that I've compared often to The Princess Bride in terms of that sort of before. Yeah, that sort of fairy tale fantasy. It's so funny and delightful, and it's got a lot of heart. So I think you're going to enjoy the movie, and I can't wait to talk about it. So that'll be on Saturday the 12th at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Right on, right on.
And as to why I'm not doing it on the 5th is because we're going to be busy. Well, so do I, Peadar, but not everybody does. Even though my dream would be that everybody, has it on physical media and everything else on physical media. I just have to accept that that's not the world we live in.
Right.
But the reason
that is just a construct of the Matrix. It's not real.
But the reason why I'm not doing it the weekend before is because we're doing a discussion of a season of television.
We are
next week.
Next week we will be discussing what? Star Wars?
Yep, the final season of Star Wars Rebels, which I'm so happy to finally get back to. And yeah, it's there's a lot of high emotions in this season. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm ready to kind of wrap up the story, as it were.
Yeah.
And move on to something else. And so you've moved that the reason you moved your stream is so that you can easily watch a whole season of television this week. And then next week the week after that, you'll be off of Here Be Dragons because I was going to do, and I know that, nerd, which it's Super Bowl Sunday and I cannot get anybody to commit. But I could get somebody to commit to something else. John, you're welcome to join us if you want. This is an exclusive, but we will be discussing, however much has been released up to that point, the Legend of Vox Machina, which has been so good. If you don't know what that is, there is a podcast called Critical Role. It is a live play Dungeons and Dragons game, the most popular one by far. And the team that did that did a Kickstarter because they wanted to make a 30-minute animated video. I think they were trying to raise $50,000. they messed up and made 12 million, 14 million on their Kickstarter. And so they produced an entire season of television. It's on Amazon Prime. It is not for kids. I'm just telling you.
I'm going to say that because I decided to schedule things the way I did so that I would avoid watching, multiple episodes of a television series the same week I was doing Stardust. I'm going to say, knock yourself out, have whoever you're going to have on. I'm going to excuse myself from that because I want all my attention to be on Stardust that week. But
I got you.
But I will say, like, I don't understand what is this Super Bowl thing.
It's a superb owl.
Oh, okay. I do know what that
right.
is.
Do you remember on What We Do in the Shadows? They had a party about the superb owl.
Yeah. Okay. I gotcha.
Yeah. Now, John, I know you've heard of the Orange Bowl.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, but for pros.
I'm contractually obligated to know what anything that has the word orange in it is.
Correct. Correct. But and then I think we're going to be doing like Book of Boba Fett after that. But the week after that, I did get an I Know That Nerd with somebody I've been trying to get for a long, long, long time, y'all. Somebody whose schedule has never lined up. In 2 years, I've been trying to get her. But I got Maester Mary to commit to I Know That Nerd. She's got the time. Her kids are old enough. She doesn't have to be right there with them every second of the day. So super excited about that one. Again, I've been trying to get her on basically since the channel started.
Yeah, I remember we were actually talking about that when we were having our little staff meeting, and I think maybe Nessie brought that up as a possibility, and you were like, "Yeah, that'll happen." So I know
I
you
keep
were
asking her, and she keeps being like, "Oh, I'm going to trial," or "Oh, I'm out of town." Like I asked her for the 13th, and she's like, "I have dinner plans," but she said, "But anytime after that," and I was like, "Let's lock it in." So I'm super happy to be having
going to trial. Typical.
I know, right?
Like, doesn't she realize what the important things in life are?
Exactly. But anyway, all that is to say, I have one guest for the Legend of Vox Machina. It will be Emily of the Eerie, who is a big time fan of the original podcast. I have not watched it, so it's all new to me, but I am in love with the show. It is so funny. Yeah. So if you want to come on, take John's place and like actually talk about it on stream, y'all know where I can be found. All my, social media links are down there. Most of you guys are in the our Slack group. Oh, that's another thing. Slack? ? What's that? It is a social media platform that we use. We have a Here Be Dragons specific Slack. It's only people. The only people there are people we've invited, but basically most of you in the chat are regulars over there too. But if you're watching this later, send me an email to we3dragons@gmail.com and I'll get you right in. Rule number 1, don't be an asshole. Other rules, there's more than one rule. We have decided. But rule number 1 is don't be an asshole.
I'm just gonna say, like, Dan, this is like the beauty of living in the age of YouTube. I don't have to actually sit through the game to enjoy that because it'll pop up online. Yeah. Although you are saying you won't actually be watching, watching the actual gameplay or the American padded rugby. So like simpatico, but I'm still not going to tune in for any part of it.
Hand egg. That's what I call it. Oh yeah. Also, Voice of Geekdom, you're here, but You guys should go subscribe to Dan's channel. He's doing some really great stuff. I know you just passed 5K subs over there, Dan. Congratulations.
And neither one of us are jealous.
Right.
Like, at
I'm
all.
not. Okay, I maybe am a little bit. Oh, who took care of that? Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Aaron.
All I'm saying is I was still retweeted by Ian McKellen. So I still have that.
You were retweeted by Ian McKellen. I was not. I did get a reply on my YouTube comment from Felicia Day once. That was cool.
Yeah. And another like thing that I feel very good about that, you know, is on a smaller scale, but it's still pretty cool, was I made a comment one time about Gwendolyn Christie's laugh during like one of the Game of Thrones audio commentaries. I just made a comment on Twitter about that, and she liked the comment. So,
nice.
So that made me feel
reply.
Good. She didn't reply, but she liked it.
Oh, the world we live in, where celebrities can hear what we say behind their back because it's actually not.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, shall we return to the Matrix, perhaps?
Sure.
So you want to get jacked in? You know what we need for this part? Guns. Lots of guns.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't even know what to say about that scene, and yeah, I certainly hope so.
Yeah. Thanks, Diane. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate you.
Yeah, there's no way to describe, like, you know, the first time seeing the movie overall, but especially the lobby sequence.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I haven't brought up yet is the music of the film, which can be divided into two categories. You've got the amazing musical score by Don Davis, which I think is a classic score, and really you know, unique because with the sort of world of the Matrix and being so like, you know, about the digital world and all that, it's amazing that the score for the film is you know, is so totally orchestral and, you know, and creating a certain sound that almost sounds digital, yet it's not. It's completely analog. But then on the other end, you've got all the really cool techno music, which is not normally my thing. I think most people would guess that. But damn, it worked so freaking well for this
in
movie.
The context of this film.
Yeah, and especially the lobby scene where they're, you know, starting with, you know, he opens up the coat and the security guard goes, "Holy shit." and then they start, you know, firing off, and you know, and the music starts playing. It's just so damn cool.
Yeah, that driving. Yeah. There's
so much to the point that I even took that music and like I did like when I was in high school. Most of what I was doing in high school as far as like video production was like making like movie trailers out of like, you know, existing film footage. But occasionally I would get out the camera and film my own sort of, you know, mock movie trailers for stuff. But in the instance of the Matrix, I actually did like got with a friend of mine and we did like, we sort of dressed up and did some like martial arts stuff. And I set it to that piece of music. It was very geeky and very like, silly, but we had a blast.
I didn't shoot sequences, but I definitely like tried the Neo look and felt like a badass. Trust me, nobody pulls it off but professional actors. Not you, not me, not anybody else.
Yeah.
Only the actors in this film. But yeah, like it is an incredible sequence. And it's so much fun, like, because they're making great use of bullet time. The stuff flying through the air and the slow-mo. God, it's so fun to watch because we've never seen that before. Never.
Yeah.
any slow-mo shots we had before were always single camera, fixed position. You didn't really get the moving camera slow-mo shot because the technology just didn't exist. Cameras were too big, shutter or frame rates weren't high enough, or to get a camera with a high enough frame rate, it was a huge camera. But that multi-camera rig, you can also put that rig in a line, and you can have your actor run down the line and take pictures of them while they're running, and it creates this slow tracking shot, and it's beautiful. I love what they did visually with the camera in this film. Like,
Peadar, I have not seen the film, but I know of it, and the reason for that is because they actually based it off of the things that I was doing in my television production class, and they still owe me money for that. So I refuse to see the movie. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But no, like there's the shots of just like, you know, and Neo like running up the side of the wall, and you know, and Trinity like, you know, just like all the stuff, you know, it's slow-mo. They're doing these really cool acrobatics and like standing on one hand while firing the gun and stuff. And
yeah, there's a little bit of wire work going on there too, Hong Kong action flick style wire work, but and a lot of times old school wire work just doesn't read because we know how physics works on such an intuitive level. We've seen it,
but not but like in the Matrix, because you know, the rules sort of don't apply. So, you know, so it works, you know, like even in the stuff with the training sequence between Morpheus and Neo, when like Neo's going up the wall and, you know, and then kicking back and doing all that stuff, where we sort of, it allows us to mentally, you know, break free from what might be realistic because it's all happening inside the Matrix.
Well, and also when you slow it down, our eye is not going to pick up on that variation. We're seeing slow-mo. We're not seeing, oh, that's not perfectly how physics works. So it's forgiving in that way. And John Taylor says, I had never read hardly any philosophy until after I saw that movie. We talked about the philosophy of it already a good bit in the first hour. And yeah, it's the reason why we didn't know what film we were going to do this week. And John said The Matrix, and I said yes, because that movie speaks to me on 100 different levels. And it is so good. Like, again, I'm an existentialist in a lot of ways. Neo is on an existential journey. And yeah, we've talked about that actually a good bit, maybe starting about 30 minutes in, and probably for a good solid 30 minutes, we talked about just the philosophical implications of what this movie is. Let's shift gears ever so slightly, okay? This movie represents what reality potentially actually is, which was one of the mind-blowing things about it. Like, it asked the question, how would you know? How would you know? And let's just assume that there is a civilization, one civilization eventually gets to the point where it can actually make simulated realities on this scale, okay? Where it can actually create a sensory input to the point that you can't tell that it's not real. You can smell and taste and touch and hear and see everything. They could have AI experiencing those things, and the AI would never know that it's not real. And because it's a computer simulation, it can happen so quickly that they can build this giant computer, this one civilization with this ability. They turn it on. Potter knows where I'm going. They turn it on, And in the first day, they can simulate thousands of realities, from the Big Bang through the heat death of the universe. Okay, which reality are you from? Which one are you more likely to be from? The one that originated it, or the 1,000 per day that's springing in and out of existence every time? Any single point of perception is likely to be from inside a simulated reality, which is why, if simulated realities are at all feasibly possible, we are probably in one. Mathematically speaking.
Well, I mean, it certainly like explains a lot of the weird shit that's been going on in the world. Just saying. Yeah, and this is where I got to go with my man Cypher. I'd rather not think about it.
Right. But see, that's the thing. Cypher knows and wants to unknow that truth.
Yeah.
Like, reality is meaningless, and he gets to that point and he sees only despair. Whereas Neo realizes that reality is meaningless, and he uses that as an opportunity to apply his vision of what should be to his reality. He gives reality the meaning he wants it to have, which is what existentialism is. I love this movie so much because I get to have this conversation.
Yeah,
and blow everybody's mind when they realize they're probably not real.
But see, and that's the thing, though. It's always driven me crazy whenever I think about stuff like this. And like, even like, I've had moments in my life where I stopped to like think about the concept of things like time and what is time. And
what time is just Mother Nature's way of making sure everything doesn't happen at once.
Yeah, but like, and you can never hold on to a single moment because, like, you know, the second you're aware of a moment, it's gone, and you've moved on to the next one. And so whenever I think about stuff like that and existence and whether, you know, this could be something like the Matrix, and but we don't know, and all this stuff, I'm just like, okay, I'm weirded out and I'm freaked out, and let me just go back to focusing on this other thing that I was worrying about.
Really feel infinitely small if you let your brain go wild. But
yeah,
when you when you realize, I like, there's a quote in the show Angel: if nothing we do matters, all that matters is what we do.
Oh, Stephen, when are we going to do a stream on Angel? Because
we should.
I love that show.
It's a great show. I haven't seen it in a long time. And I'll probably just skip season 4 altogether.
Oh.
But like, I strongly dislike season 4 of that show. But anyway, maybe in the future. But that's Angel has had his own existential crisis in that moment, and he came out the other side going, nothing I do matters. So all that matters is what I choose. If nothing we do matters, all that matters is what we do. But he's talking about that choice to have an effect on the world, to look into the abyss and not see nothing, to see infinite potential. Like Neo does. The opposite of what Cypher sees. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, chatters, we've got about 30 minutes left in the stream. Y'all bring up anything you want to make sure we touch on. There's several characters. We haven't talked that much about Trinity.
Yeah, I was just about to say
let's get to Trinity talk.
And like, she starts off this movie, and there's just like, we talked before about bullet time, but like, I'm just trying to remember like how I felt the first time, like, she gets up and, turns around and leaps up into the air and just freezes there as the camera comes around. I was so mesmerized, and then she goes on this long chase sequence, and she like, and we can feel that with her, and so we immediately become attached to this character just through this pure, adrenaline, and that we're going through with the character. And again, like, you don't get what's going on in that sequence on your first viewing. So like, she's racing for this cell phone, and not cell phone, payphone.
Yeah, payphone.
Payphone. And she just runs into it, presumably just to end up getting, smashed in by a truck. And we're like, what the hell? It's an amazing way to introduce a character. But we don't know necessarily what's completely going on with her throughout the course of the film. We really don't get a sense of what she's feeling and what her thought process on Neo and everything is until the end of the film. And so she's a bit of a mystery throughout the film. And I think that makes her intriguing for us to watch. And I love that scene when her and Neo first meet, and she comes up to him in the club, and she's very mysterious, and just their dialogue, in that scene. And of course, he's like, typical man. He's like, I thought you were a guy, and she's like, most men do.
Yeah,
I love that. And
in that scene also is the part where some guy calls Neo our own personal Jesus Christ as well, further reinforcing that sort of Christ figure, which Jesus is part of the Trinity. And Neo represents that Christ figure very well. Morpheus actually fits the father role very well. I can't remember if it's Tank who says he's like a father to us.
Yeah.
And then Trinity is the spirit that binds them together. So yeah, she is what creates the Trinity out of the Father and Son. Anyway, it's there's so much symbolism going on here. It's really kind of crazy.
Sorry, I was following along with the angel discussion you're still having.
Yeah. And Potter also says that there are people that can drink in the U.S. who were born after The Matrix was released. Yeah, I mean, it's an older movie, to be sure. But does it hold up? Not as I said at the very top of the stream, there are a few shots of the CGI that does not quite hold up for me. But man, the storytelling and everything else about it is so good, right down to the choice. Now, John, we may disagree about this because they do cut away from the actual score as he's in that final shot, as he is the sort of Buddha ascending into heaven, having self-actualized and rejecting the limitations that the world has placed on him. They cut to a song called Wake Up, which is very tied to the dream state, by Rage Against the Machine, which is also
I am very conflicted about this. I'm so conflicted because I will acknowledge the fact that I think that musical choice works extremely well, just because of, when Neo comes out of the phone, the way he's sort of carrying himself, and the music just works with that. And it does end the movie on a very, this is fucking cool, sort of way.
Song.
But like, having listened to the score on its own many times, I love the finale that Don Davis gives to like his thematic work, and I think it's an absolutely gorgeous ending to the score. It's fixed a little bit for me by the fact that when the whole trilogy is taken into context, Don Davis does get to finish off the trilogy with his score, and
Mhm.
that continues on into the end credits, where at the end of the third film, over the credits, you get that magnificent choral piece that plays during the final Smith Neo fight, which is so operatic and grand.
Right.
And so the fact that the trilogy ends with that helps that they removed his ending music for the first film. But like, that's the beauty of score albums. I can listen to the music as it was originally intended and still enjoy the kick-ass way the movie ends.
Right, because it is effective.
Yeah, it is very effective.
Again, a song by Rage Against the Machine, which is what he's been doing this whole film, called Wake Up, which is, alludes back to the being asleep and Morpheus being the god of dreams and all of that we talked about earlier. Like, I think it's very effective. It's a good song, too. It's off Rage Against the Machine's first album, their self-titled album, which I had in high school multiple copies of at different times on CD. Like when you're a teenager and your CD gets scratched because you didn't take care of it and you just go buy a new one. Yeah, I did that. But
I mean, that's sort of, it's so funny. I'm such a hypocrite because I buy all of these CDs, but then I end up ripping that music onto iTunes,
right.
Which at that point you're listening to digital music anyway, but at least I own that music. But the benefit of that is that I don't have to worry about scratched CDs like I used to, because I really only have to handle them the one time to rip them on iTunes, and then they can stay pristine on the shelf without having to worry about them. But I too was guilty, like back when I was younger, of like playing CDs and then leaving them sitting around. And
yeah, we've all had a stack of CDs sitting next to the player. Oh, it's fine. You just put it face down on top of the one above it, and
yeah, I've repurchased a number of CDs that I owned from those days.
But anyway, great album by Rage Against the Machine. I loved it. I love that song. It's so good. Let's talk about Trinity a little more. Do you think her story, her arc, her representation, or whatever, her character is lessened in any way because she serves as the love interest of the protagonist?
Yeah. I don't know. The simple fact is, I don't know. I actually always felt that the love story was helped by the sequels, because and I'll admit to
I'm not talking about the sequels. I'm talking about this movie.
Yeah. I'm going to be
awesome. She's badass. She gets to do a lot of cool stuff, but her role is to be a motivating factor for Neo in some ways.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest, I never really, again, talking just about this film, I don't know that I completely think that the love story is satisfying on its own terms within this movie, because it's like, it's not that the ingredients aren't there. Like, I can see, why she falls. It just feels a little underserved, so that at least on my initial viewing, when the end comes and she says she loves him, I'm like, really? You haven't known him for that long.
And I asked the question because I don't like, I love this movie and there's very little to complain about, but you know me, I'm going to nitpick just to find something, anything. And I guess that could be one of my small ones, is I agree. I did not understand why she loved Neo. I understood that she did.
Yeah.
And why she could, but I didn't understand why she actually did. What is it about him that you love so much?
Yeah,
And
and
what has the movie done to show me that?
yeah, I'd say it's probably one of the weaker elements of the film for me, and so.
But most of the, well, I won't say most, but I've seen two women sound off in the comments saying they just think that Trinity has her own agency. They don't see her as the, I mean, yeah, AK said, yes, she's the love interest, but she's had her own agency and strength. Strong female characters are allowed to have romances. Hey, I don't disagree with that sentiment. I just wanted to have the conversation, you know? I think it's
And I
worthy.
will say, like, and we are talking just about this first film. I actually really love their story over the course of the three films, and one of my favorite moments, even though logistically you do wonder how it's possible, but I really do love that moment in the second film where she's dying, and and he literally like reaches into her heart to bring her back into life. It's something about the way that moment is played out and the music, and it just so I think over the course of the three films, I definitely get their oh yeah, we did, Aaron, definitely.
Yeah, I remember actually.
and plus you get much more of Trinity as like I think part of the thing for this film is that so much of her is shrouded in secrecy in this first film, and so that's why at times it can kind of make you wonder if like is that the focus of her character. But I think it's just because of a lot of her intentions and goals and stuff like that are kind of
I just had a thought. There's themes in this movie about how perception creates reality. And I've also talked a good deal about how I think Neo is the one because he chooses to believe that he is at some point. But our perception of our reality is not created just by my perception, but by yours as well, and everyone else's as well. There's a lot of things we all agree on, but we all see things differently too. But I wonder if part of the building of that perception of reality comes from the fact that Trinity believes he's the one. And therefore, that gives him the permission to believe that about himself. And honestly, when you're talking about existentialism, the idea that the world is meaningless, therefore I'm going to choose to promote kindness and life as the purpose of my life, since the universe doesn't provide me one, the one I provide for myself is one of love. That is sort of like the final step in that process of self-actualization, is to love and be loved. And I think maybe that's part of what Trinity is serving in that moment.
I will also say that now that I'm thinking about it more, I think she actually does have a lot of like elements of her character that stand apart from just being the love interest. I'm thinking about moments like with Cypher, and especially that climactic moment where she's on the phone with him talking about Morpheus and all this stuff, and then later on in the film when she says to Neo when he's going off to try and save Morpheus, and she's like, I'm coming with you, and he says, no you're not, and she like gets in his face and is like, no really, and then she's like, Morpheus means more to me than he does to you. You just met him. and plus I'm the ranking officer on here, so you can go to hell.
Right.
So like there's great moments like that, and so she very clearly does have things going on with her character that are not just, I'm the love interest for for Neo. And
all good points, all very good points. I'm glad I asked the question though. You know me. I'm always gonna I'll play devil's advocate even.
Yeah. But yeah,
But
I would have liked to see within this first film more of what is it about Neo that she falls in love with. But I also think that question is served quite well by the sequels.
yeah, she has the
So,
cards. She does keep her cards close to her chest.
Yeah.
Most of them do, maybe by necessity. I like this. AK put it best. Thank you, AK. But yeah, okay. Anything else to say about Trinity?
Just Carrie-Anne Moss is a legend. Just like just outside of these discussions we're having on the actual character, like the way that she plays her, and she commands the screen from the second she shows up in the film, and again, going back to the lobby scene, the way she's decked out, and in her coat, and with her weapons and everything. It's just, and the way she slides on the floor, I've always really liked that when she's going to get the bag of guns. And
she also does a scorpion kick, which is so badass.
Yeah.
That bend over at the waist, kick over your back. Yeah, it's so badass.
And I have heard that she's in the Netflix Marvel shows that I'm watching right now. I just started with Daredevil, so I'm looking forward to seeing her show up.
Yeah, she was definitely in the second season of Jessica Jones.
Okay.
Maybe the first as well. I don't remember. Oh no, it's the first season of Jessica Jones.
Which, by the way, side note, I am freaking loving Daredevil.
Yeah, I need to get on that. I need to get on that. I need to get on Daredevil. You should give Vox Machina a try. I'm just saying, it's good. I think you'll like it.
I'm currently watching
too many other shows.
4 shows that I haven't, watched before, or at least seasons that I haven't watched before. So I've got my plate full. So
yeah.
anything else is gonna have to wait.
It'll be there.
Yeah.
All right. We are getting closer to the end, and we haven't talked enough about Agent Smith yet. So, we've talked about Hugo Weaving, but we haven't talked about Agent Smith.
Just that interrogation scene, with Neo. Just the beginning, just, you help your landlady carry out her garbage, it's you want to talk about, like I said, there's so many parts of this movie that are iconic, but Agent Smith, what you need for movies like this to work, or you need a great villain, and Agent Smith is one of the most incredible villains in the history of cinema, I feel.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, the way Hugo Weaving plays that part, he is enjoying himself.
Yeah.
Whenever he is doing what they feel, when he's doing the agent stuff.
And let's remember, nowadays, you say the name Hugo Weaving, it brings up sort of feelings of, this is a guy who a lot of people know. We love his work. We know he is going to be fun to watch on screen. He does a lot of genre stuff. But when this movie came out, you say the name Hugo Weaving, you're like, who? He made such an impact in this role.
Well,
and
he's Agent Smith, he's Elrond, and he's also V from V for Vendetta.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And of course, Red Skull. I'll throw that in there for the Marvel people.
Oh yeah, he was Red Skull too.
Yeah.
I can't believe you brought up the MCU reference and I didn't. What is what is happening? We're obviously in a simulation.
Yeah. But no, like, yeah, and I talked about the interrogation moment with Morpheus, just the way, like, and that's what makes his character so fascinating, is he's not just doing all this because he's a program and he's been instructed to do this. He can't stand the Matrix. He wants to get out. And so
it's the smell.
Yeah, oh my God, just his delivery of that. It's the smell. If there is such a thing. And then the way he uses his fingers to, grab Morpheus by the nostrils, and it's God, he's
because
so
he's chewing up the scenery in that scene.
And then in that scene where Morpheus, plunges through the wall, and we just lost Stephen. Hopefully he'll be back. But like when he, here we go.
I'm back. Sorry, y'all. I reached for my mouse, and it's got a lot of extra buttons on the side, and I accidentally clicked the one that's the back button. I was going to highlight highlight South London resellers. Love Agent Smith. We all love Agent Smith.
That's all right. You were unplugged, Stephen. It's fine. No, but the moment when Morpheus plunges through the wall, and so they can get Neo out, and and he's there tussling with Smith, and Smith goes, Morpheus, and he goes, and you are, and he goes, Smith, Agent Smith. I just find it so hysterical. Like, it's just so great watching the man work, and yeah, so there's, and especially once you take in the whole trilogy, there's such complexity to this character, and
just even in this film there is. He is an inverse parallel to both Neo and Cypher. Cypher wants back in, but Smith wants nothing more than to get out. Yeah. He's like, God, I hate that we need this place. I hate that it's my job to keep people in line. I'm so tired of it. I want this to be over.
Yeah,
so,
and
it's hard for me to quantify how I think of him, because I think of Neo and Cypher as being very, very direct opposites of each other, philosophically, ethically, what have you. But Smith is weirdly, in a lot of ways, very much like Neo. They both want the end of the Matrix, but they want it in different ways. Agent Smith hates that it's necessary and wishes there was some way to just keep humans as the energy source without having to build this sort of construct for them to live in.
Yeah, I mean, his whole speech where he goes on about the fact that humans are like a virus, and and we are the cure. And then when he talks about the first Matrix and how it was designed to be a paradise, but that nobody would accept it, which seems like, talk about a commentary on the world, like that rings very true, where, like, it does sometimes feel like we define ourselves through suffering, and so like so much of that is so good, and there's so much of that whole speech and much of Smith's dialogue that could be utterly ridiculous in the hands of a lesser actor. Mm-hmm. But like I said, Hugo Weaving knows what he's doing. He knows not to take himself too seriously in the part, but nonetheless to do it in such a way that Smith captures our attention. We hang on every word he says, but simultaneously we're cracking up at half of it.
Right. Like it's not in the first movie, it's in the second one, and it's right before the worst scene in the movie, which is the 100 Smiths fight. One man's opinion. Your mileage may vary, but there's that me too. Like that is such, and like you can tell even in that moment, Agent Smith is like, "This is fun. I'm having a good time." What? But one of the things that I want to make sure everybody remembers is that every time they fight an agent, they're killing a person because the agents
Yeah.
hijack actual people's minds from the Matrix. I mean, you see it happen. You know, one minute you're
Well,
a homeless man, or you're a truck driver, or you're a helicopter pilot, and the next year it's an agent, because that agent has displaced that mind and taken over the construct in that place.
yeah, it's one hell of a moral quandary
It is.
because you're like, do we feel bad about taking the lives of these innocent people, but at the same time, every one of those innocent people could at any moment kill us because
Mm-hmm.
they can be an agent.
We are
So
fighting to free them, but they are the enemy.
yeah, and so do we have any choice but to, to view them that way? Because otherwise, like, you know, we're gonna lose if we don't look at them that way. So it's and we'll die
It's a
because
really interesting moral quandary. That one that this movie does not exactly, or even this whole franchise, does not exactly supply what it feels. I don't feel like this film supplies an answer for that. I don't think it
yeah,
intends
and
to.
I actually think that it's not just giving the characters out; it gives the audience an out to sort of, if all of those people are potentially an agent who are going to kill our main characters, it then gives the characters justification for killing those people, and so maybe for a good portion of the audience they don't have to
Like,
get bound up in that morality
like
of it.
the lobby fight scene, Neo and Trinity show up and murder innocent people.
Yeah,
That is what happens in that scene.
and the only way you can even conceivably start to get away with that, as far as like what your main characters, the characters you're rooting for doing that, is if you establish that they're actually potential bad guys and you don't have a
Right.
choice. And so yeah,
Right. Like like what keeps it from being just straight up a massacre by murder hobos is the fact that they could be an agent at any time. And
yeah,
they've got to take them out quickly so the agents don't have time to sort of zero in on them. But yeah, I love this movie for its philosophy, for its questions about morality and ethics, for its fantastic cinematography, the way it pushed that art form forward. Great and interesting, just surface level story, fantastic performances. Most of the CGI is very, very good and still holds up. Like as you said, the music from score to soundtrack, all of it, all of this movie is really good. I'm really glad we settled on this one. I'm really glad I rewatched it too.
yeah. And I do want to like hammer home, like, if you've mostly paid attention music wise to like the techno music and all that, which seems to be the music that's most usually associated with these films, like really take a moment to listen to the score, because I think it's actually one of the more underappreciated scores, because it doesn't get the limelight that the other music from the film does, and I think it's one of the best of any film franchise, and it adds so much to the identity of these films. One more thing before we wrap up, because we were
Sure.
talking about Smith's uh like the way he plays off these lines and stuff, and we did, And since you opened the door to the second film and some of the dialogue, I do want to read like one of his, it's like nobody else could pull this off. Where it's where they meet in the park before that horrible CGI fight, and like it starts off where the talking goes. I killed you, Mr. Anderson. I watched you die with a certain satisfaction, I might add. But then something happened. Something that I knew was impossible, but it happened anyway. You destroyed me, Mr. Anderson. After that, I understood the rules. I knew what I was supposed to do, but I didn't. I couldn't. I was compelled to stay, compelled to disobey. And now here I stand because of you, Mr. Anderson, because of you. I'm no longer an agent of the system. Because of you, I've changed. I'm unplugged, a new man, so to speak, like you, apparently free. Congratulations. Thank you. But as you well know, appearances can be deceiving. I mean, it's just like...
It is so good.
So good.
Like I'm hearing him say it. I know you're reading the line, but I'm hearing him say it. Revisiting that particular line, he has reached that point in the existential journey where he realizes that reality is meaningless, but he has chosen. He woke up and chose violence at the end of the day, though. He chose life is meaningless. He didn't despair at the lack of meaning. He didn't rejoice at the infinite possibility. He became angered by that.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting character. I really would like to watch the later two films to sort of with some of these fresher ideas, newer. He obviously discussed it, and sort of look at what do I think Smith is really doing here, because he is really I don't know if it's an underrated performance. Everybody freaking knows and loves Agent Smith. I don't think he's underrated. I think it's very well understood that that's a fantastic actor playing a fantastic character.
And I will say, like, just saying a quick word about the sequels overall. I always thought it was a bit of a shame that they didn't make that into a single sequel, because I think one of my chief complaints about the two films is that they are bloated, and it's just a bit too much. Certain things are dwelled on for too long. I think, if they had combined the two into one film, there's a lot of really great stuff in there, and I think that they could have, there's stuff that I love from those movies. There's just unfortunately, there's just unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't thrill me. But
it'd be like that sometimes. Yeah. AK says Smith wanted the rules, but Neo came along and said, "Nah." But you're right. And I don't know how to change the name. Says inserts 20-minute rave scene into chat. Dude, that can't be more than like 12 minutes, which is not saying much. It is. I think it serves its purpose in the sort of like meta narrative, but from a like strictly storytelling standpoint, it is jarring.
It's not even 12 minutes. It's shorter than that. People just think it's longer. But yeah, no, I actually think the thing that sticks out for me the most is what doesn't work is the very lengthy, extended Zion action sequences in the third film, which we're not emotionally attached to, because like none of our main characters are part of that. But
right.
But anyway,
it's all visual spectacle.
Yeah, but again, that's why, like, the feelings that I have about the sequels, sort of mixed, where there's stuff that I love and stuff that I'm less crazy about. Like, I think over time they have sort of unconsciously, like meshed with, when I think of the first film, which is why it's always such a glorious experience when I go back to revisit that first film and see how utterly spectacular it is.
Like the later ones are good. This one is a masterpiece. I said it earlier. This one is a masterpiece. Thank you, Wachowskis. Thank you, Keanu Reeves and Lawrence Fishburne and Carrie Ann Moss and Hugo Weaving and Joe Pantoliano, and all the other actors and cast and crew. Like everybody really just brought it. Cinematography.
I want to go. I'm gonna go ahead and shout out some of the other actors. Marcus Chong, who played Tank.
Right.
Anthony Ray Parker played Dozer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to mispronounce this. My apologies to the actor if he's watching this. Julian Arahanga as APOC. Matt Doran as Mouse, who also has an appearance in Attack of the Clones, trying to sell death sticks to Obi-Wan. And Gloria Foster as the Oracle, which
and
we
Belinda
didn't really...
Belinda McCloria's switch.
Yeah, which I don't feel like we talked very much about the Oracle. Do you
want to take a few minutes to say Oracle?
She's just so, so fantastic, which is why, obviously it was such a, it was sad for a number of reasons when the actress passed away after the second film. And they had to recast her, but like she is just so good in these moments with Neo. They have such a great back and forth. What's really gonna bake your noodle later on is, would you still have broken it if I hadn't said anything? And just all that stuff. Yeah, there is no spoon. I did
say at some point there is no spoon, but it was literally just like a side reference in the moment to the kung fu fight between Neo and, because it serves a similar purpose, that there is no spoon and that reality is the perception you make. And
to be honest, there's a lot we didn't mention.
Yeah,
because there was a lot of time that we spent just gushing about how great the movie is.
Well, there's a lot packed into this 2-hour movie too.
Yeah. But yeah, so the Oracle is fantastic, great performance, and I just love how warm she is. Like, you just instantly love her. But then there's the question, which is raised more so in the second film, like, well, she's actually a program in the system. Can she be trusted? Which is not really an element of this film, where you're not really questioning whether she can be trusted. You're just interpreting, what she's saying. But yeah, so there's a lot. Oh, I know also what I wanted to mention in there. The other two agents, one of them is played by an actor named Paul Goddard, who, for any of you who are fans of Farscape, you will recognize that name because he played a character in that show. I'm trying to remember his name. He was the guy who had like the metal faceplate. And then the other agent is played by Robert Taylor, who, if any of you have seen the Netflix series Longmire,
John, I just Googled it. He played a character called Stark.
Yes. That should have come into my mind given who I'm talking to.
I haven't watched Farscape, but I Googled it just to see it. I'm like, oh, okay.
But yeah, Robert Taylor played the lead character of Walt Longmire in the show Longmire. So it's just really funny seeing them in these roles where they're just playing agents and they look very serious. But yeah, no.
I also want to shout out Bill Pope, who was the cinematographer on this film and has had a very long and storied career. Did some Spider-Man movies. Did Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which was also another really beautiful movie. He's had quite a career, all the way back to Darkman and Army of Darkness, Clueless. Okay, and like again, we've talked enough about the way that cinematography was changed by this film. Hats off to the artist that made that happen. Anyway, anything else?
I was just looking for the name of the fight choreographer, who is a very famous guy who also, I believe he did the stuff on Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon too.
Wouldn't surprise me.
I'm not going to be able to pronounce it. Wu Ping Yun? Might be getting that wrong. But
Wu Ping Yun.
Yeah, let me look at his filmography and say, yeah, I think I see Crouching Tiger on there.
Yeah, I'm Matrix, Kill Bill,
yeah.
Crouching Tiger. Did some stuff in Lethal Weapon.
Yeah. I just want to make sure we mentioned him because, obviously such a huge part of this movie.
Yeah. There's a lot of talent came together to make this, and they really brought their A game. And
I wish you were too, Amy.
Yeah.
You made this stuff much easier. But no, everybody involved in this film just brought their A game, and there's a reason why it stood the test of time. This movie is now going on 23 years old, and I can't believe that I'm saying those words, but it's true.
Yeah. Well, thank God they gave it to us. I need to go watch the latest one still, and I'm looking forward to it. I hear they have King George in it.
Yeah. I cracked up when I saw the trailer for this.
Yeah, me too.
Oh God.
I was like that Leonardo DiCaprio pointing meme. Oh, I know that guy.
Anyway. And it's funny because I actually knew him from another Netflix series. I'm trying to remember what it was called. He was basically, and he was an FBI agent talking to serial killers and stuff. So I knew him from that. And then all of a sudden I see him in Hamilton as King George. I'm like, oh, wow.
He's great. He's great. So anyway, I think that's it for me. Again, we could go on and on and on, but I finished my coffee, which means all of that is in my bladder right now.
I'm all out of water, so it's only a matter of time before my voice starts getting really hoarse. So
was it Mindhunter?
Mindhunter, yep.
Yep. It is not Wednesday yet, Sean, but soon. That's our D&D day. Sean plays, and I play D&D with Sean on Wednesday. But yeah, I think that's me done. Come back next week. We're going to be talking about season 4 of Star Wars Rebels.
Yes.
I have never seen it. John's been a longtime fan. I will work my way through that show this week. And then the week after that, I will be covering some Legend of Vox Machina with Emily of the Eerie and other guests TBD. And that Saturday, the 12th, John will be talking about the fantasy fairy tale film
Stardust, and I'll have Aaron and AK.
Both of whom are in the chat right now, or maybe AK just left. Yeah, AK will be there. Aaron will be there. Yeah, this Aaron So yeah, I look forward to it. But yeah, to everyone who is here live watching, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a fantastic, fun conversation. John, always great to riff with you back and forth. Um, if you're
Yeah,
watching this later, hey, that's what it's here for. Thanks for watching it later. I know uh, our live viewership is not the same. Like, we always get way more views within the first 24 hours. I know a lot of people tell me that we have a lot of European watchers that don't watch it live, but watch it Monday or listen to it Monday morning. We love you guys too. I understand the relative position of the sun can be a real bitch when it comes to where you get your content uh, and what time that content is available. But anyway, if you are contributing in any way, thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. John, you got anything else you want to say?
something that I forgot to mention. A lot of you know because I mentioned it in the Slack. But probably in the future, I am going to be taking a step back from doing as many streams on John Webster film. I'm getting a lot more work hours now, so it's just I'm not going to have the opportunity to either necessarily watch stuff for a stream each week or, and then, I just can't be doing like 2 streams on both days of the weekend and then, heading right back to work. So I'm going to have to take some time off, and it will probably, when I do stream, it'll be on weeks when we can work it out so that Steven's, doing something where maybe he doesn't need me, on this
I always
channel. So
need you, man. I always need you.
I appreciate that.
You are
But just
my
so
internet
that,
husband. I need you.
but just so that I'm not piling on the stress, but I will still try and do it as often as I can, because I really enjoy doing those streams. Um, but I just need to try to not lose my mind. so yeah, it will have to slow down a bit.
I will also say, like, I forgot to say it in the mid roll. Like and subscribe. It's YouTube. Do those things that make the algorithm like me better. We are not close, but getting closer to 1,000. We're on that march to 1,000. That's my goal. Before I die, I want 1,000 subscribers. Yeah, you're not wrong. I have to pee, and we're talking about streams. Nicely done. Also, I'm going to shout out our brand newest new patron, who I got a notification for 4 minutes ago. This lady right here, Blue Lemons. Mwah, mwah, mwah. We love you, Blue. And for those of you that want to jump on Zoom, I'll probably jump on for a little while on our Zoom call. If you want to get in on those Zoom calls, all you got to do is send me an email to this address right here, we3dragons@gmail.com. I will get you into our Slack group, which is where we set up all of our Zoom calls. We have an ongoing Zoom. And yeah, I'm going to go hang out at the pub with my friends. All right, so I'll see you all there. Not immediately. I'm going to go do a thing or two first, one of which involves streaming. But yeah. Thank you for that joke, by the way. It gave me permission to make it again. So yeah, we'll see you all next week for some Star Wars Rebels. And until then, you know what it is. Peace.
Peace.
And be excellent to each other.